Undercover boss sees waiter let hungry children and their mom in, and it changes his life forever. Sometimes, you have to become invisible to see the truth. The man standing outside the weathered brick building used to own it in every legal, financial, and philosophical sense of the word. And yet, that morning, with a thrift store jacket zipped tight against the wind and a fake name stitched onto his chest, David Larson felt like a stranger to the place he'd once built with his bare ambition. It had been 10 years since he'd opened Hearth and Oak, the family-style restaurant that became the cornerstone of his fast-growing empire. What started with warm loaves of sourdough and handwritten thank yous had expanded into 25 locations. All clockwork efficient and surgically branded. Profits were up. Customer reviews were clean. But something in David's gut had soured. A letter had arrived 2 weeks earlier. No return address. Just a single line scrawled on notebook paper. Your house may be full, but your table is empty. He didn't understand ITAT at first. Now he was here, disguised as Rick, the new temp dishwasher at the original flagship location, where the whole journey had begun. The hostess barely looked at him when he stepped inside. No warmth, no welcome, just tired eyes and a mumbled clock in back. David moved slowly through the kitchen, absorbing the stiff posture of the line cooks, the mechanical banter, the way laughter seemed out of place. Something was missing. Something human. He hadn't expected to feel it this fast, and he hadn't expected what he was about to see next. The lunch rush came in waves, and Rick moved like a ghost through the clatter. The dishes were endless. Plates, scraped clean or barely touched, tossed into the sink like afterthoughts. No one looked twice at the temp worker in the corner. That's how he wanted it. From back here, David could listen. And listening had always been his superpower. Back when he used it, he was scrubbing a plate when it happened. The voices came through the swinging door just outside the kitchen, tense, hushed, but sharp enough to cut. You can't just let people sit down without paying. Eric, that's not how this works. I know, but they're just kids. Dana, they looked hungry. We are not a charity. We are a business. If you want to feed strays, do it on your own time. I've warned you before. David froze. He didn't recognize the first voice. But the second, the one defending the kid, shed something deep. It wasn't just kindness. It was conviction. And he sounded young. The waitress, Dana, apparently a supervisor, came storming into the back moments later, muttering under her breath about playing hero and employees making her job harder. David slipped through the swinging door and took a careful peek into the dining area. That's when he saw them. A young mother, maybe in her late 20s, sat huddled in a booth near the back. Her coat was too thin for the weather, and her hair hung in wet strands over her face. 2 children, a girl, maybe 8. A boy even younger sat across from her, still in their school clothes. They were eating slowly, like they didn't want the food to disappear. And standing beside them, quietly refilling their water glasses, was a server, thin, with tired eyes but a calm presence. Namatak Eric. He wasn't doing it for attention. No big gesture, no loud announcement, just one human quietly showing up for another. David watched as Dana stalked over and whispered something to him sharply. Eric didn't argue, but his posture sagged, and the kindness in his face dimmed for a second. The mother noticed. She looked up at Eric and mouthed something. Thank you. And something cracked open in David's chest. This wasn't just about a rule break. This was about how far the company had drifted from its origin, from the nights he used to personally cook for families who couldn't pay, from the mission he once lived. As Dana turned away, she didn't notice the temp dishwasher watching her. But Eric did. Their eyes met for half a second. No recognition, Just a flicker of silent shame, maybe even fear. David turned and went back into the kitchen, heart thudding harder now. There was more to this, and he was going to find out exactly what. If stories like this move you, consider subscribing. You won't want to miss where this one goes. David didn't sleep that night. The image of the little boy licking ketchup off his thumb haunted him, and the quiet bravery in Eric's eyes. It wasn't pity that got under David's skin, it was recognition. He knew that look. He'd worn that look before Hearth and Oak had investors and legal teams and branding consultants. It was a dream born in his dad's garage. David had grown up with a single mother who juggled 3 jobs. Sometimes they shared a can of beans for dinner. He remembered the shame of using food stamps and the kindness of strangers who looked the other way when the money didn't quite add up. Now, somehow, his business, the one built on feeding people, was turning them away. Back at the restaurant the next day, David showed up early. Same thrift store jacket, same fake name. No one questioned him. He started wiping down shelves and hauling in crates like a background character in his own story. But his eyes never left Eric. The young server moved with a quiet efficiency, always watching, always listening. He knew the regulars by name. Remembered that old mister. Hughes liked lemon with his tea and that the Johnson twins were allergic to peanuts. He offered warm smiles where others offered indifference. But beneath it all, David could see it, exhaustion, barely hidden behind practiced politeness. During a smoke break, David struck up small talk with another dishwasher, a lanky teen with earbuds hanging out of his hoodie. Eric, the kid said, popping a fry in his mouth. Yeah? He's solid. Used to be assistant manager before they cut his hours. Said he pissed off Dana one too many times. David's breath caught. He was demoted. Pretty much, dude still runs the floor half the time. But management doesn't see it, or doesn't want to. Later that day, David dug into the staff files during a break. As CEO, he still had admin access, a loophole he hadn't yet closed. He found Eric's record. Eric Mendoza, hired 2017. Promoted 2019, assistant manager. Disciplinary notes, 2022 questioning policy. Insubordination, demoted 2023. But below the notes, he saw something else. Customer reviews. Dozens of 5-star comments mentioning Eric by name. Eric made us feel like family. I come here because of that waiter who always remembers my dad's birthday. My kid was having a rough day, and Eric turned it around. David sat back, stolnet. This man wasn't just good at his job, he was the soul of the place. And he'd been buried under policy. The worst part, David realized he hadn't been in this building for over 3 years. Not since the expansion. Not since everything became about metrics and quarterly goals. He looked around the office. A framed poster still hung on the wall. Everyone deserves a seat at the table. How far had he drifted? He closed Eric's file slowly, the weight of it settling on his shoulders. This wasn't about one waiter anymore. It was about everything Hearth and Oak had forgotten. Rain tapped against the back alley door as David stood outside on break, watching the rivulets stream down the rusted dumpster. His fake name tag was crooked now, the adhesive losing its grip. But inside, the real weight pulling him down wasn't the costume mate, was the truth he'd uncovered. He didn't expect Eric to step out beside him. Hey, Eric said, lighting a cigarette with a shaky flick of the lighter. You're the new guy, right? Rick? David nodded. Yeah, just filling in for a week. They stood in silence for a moment, watching steam curl into the gray sky. Eric sighed. Sorry, you had to see that scene yesterday. That's not... Well, I guess it kind of is how things go around here now. David kept his tone even. You were just trying to help that family. Eric shrugged, flicking ash onto the pavement. They weren't trying to scam anyone. You could see it. That mom was drowning. She just needed someone to throw her a rope for once instead of watching her sink. His voice cracked slightly, but he covered it with another puff of smoke. David's throat tightened. You always liked this job. Eric let out a bitter laugh. I love this job. Used to think I was part of something. Hearth and Oak used to mean something different. You know, it felt like we were feeding people, not just serving them. There was heart in it. Now it's charts, numbers, scripts. He paused, then added quietly, I believed in this place. David swallowed hard. What happened? Eric stared at the wet concrete, eyes distant. A few years back, we had this older guy, Martin, regular customer. Lived alone. He'd come in every Wednesday. I ordered the same soup. Tip big even when he couldn't afford it. One day he comes in looking pale, like real bad. I wanted to comp his meal, sit him down somewhere warm. Dana freaked out, said it wasn't protocol. David remembered Martin. He remembered writing him a birthday card once. A lump formed in his throat. Eric continued. I stood up to her. I said it's a restaurant, not a robot. Next day, I'm demoted. Hours cut. She called it attitude problems. He looked over, the cigarette burning low between his fingers. I didn't fight it. I thought someone higher up would step in. I thought the company still cared. David could barely breathe. Eric chuckled bitterly. You know what's funny? The founder, Larson or whatever, he always talked about how he wanted this to be a place where everyone felt like family. Guess he forgot what family looks like. The words hit like a punch to the chest. David opened his mouth, but no words came out. Eric crushed the cigarette under his shoe. Anyway, I just thought I'd say you're doing good back there. Dish pit's not for the weak. He turned and walked back inside. Shoulders hunched, apron soaked at the edges. David stood alone, heart splintering under the weight of his silence. He'd built something beautiful, then abandoned it. And now, the people holding it up were the ones paying the price. If you've ever felt unseen, you're not alone. Subscribe for more stories that shine light where it's needed. David couldn't scrub the shame off his hands. Back inside the kitchen, the clatter of dishes and sizzling pans surrounded him like static, but his mind replayed Eric's words on a loop. I thought the company still cared. Guess he forgot what family looks like. He had become the very thing he swore never to be. That night, after his shift, David didn't go home. He drove out to the far edge of town and parked across from an old community center, the place where he'd once hosted a free meal night every December. Before the expansion swallowed his time and the mission got reduced to bullet points on investor slides. It was dark now. The lights inside flickered weakly, and a hand-painted banner from years ago still flapped in the wind. Everyone eats. He used to believe that, deeply, that food was more than service, it was care. Connection. Humanity on a plate. Somewhere along the way, ambition overtook intention. David didn't wake up and decide to be a villain. But that's the thing about neglect. It doesn't announce itself. It erodes in silence. One missed meeting. One ignored email. One, not my problem at a time. He opened his phone and scrolled through old photos from the restaurant's early days team dinners. Handwritten notes on napkins. A picture of Eric smiling with 3 other servers in the back alley. Arms linked, beaming like they'd built something sacred. Back then, David knew all their names. He knew their birthdays. He told himself for years that by scaling the business, he was helping more people. That impact required growth. But growth without soul is just expansion. What he saw now was a hollow version of his dream, propped up by people like Eric, compassionate, loyal, overlooked, and punished. The disciplinary note in Eric's file wasn't about breaking rules. It was about remembering why they mattered in the first place. David had created policies to protect the brand, but those policies had become weapons, stripping people of their ability to see one another, to act with instinct, empathy, heart. He saw himself in Eric, the younger version, the one who slept on couches and served soup with pride, the one who started Hearth and Oak not to get rich, but to give something back. Now, standing in the shadow of that forgotten community center, David felt the weight of 1,000 silent compromises settle on his chest. And for the first time in years, he cried, not for the company, not for the brand, but for what he'd let die. He made a decision that night, yet unshakable. He couldn't change the past, but he could damn sure start rewriting the future. And he knew exactly where to begin. Some mistakes can't be undone, but they can be redeemed. Follow for the next chapter of this story. You don't want to miss what comes next. The next morning, David showed up early again, but this time, not to observe. He was ready to speak. He changed out of the dishwasher's uniform and into jeans and a plain button-down. No tia, no pretense. Just the man he used to be, stripped down to the bones. He walked through the back door of Hearth and Oak like a ghost returning to the living. No one recognized him at first. Not until Dana walked in, coffee in hand, and froze mid-step, her lips parted in shock. "Mr. Larson," she whispered, heads turned. The hum of morning prep came to a full stop. For a moment, no one spoke. David offered a small nod. "Can I speak to Eric?" Privately. They found a quiet booth in the corner away from the stairs. The whispers, the heat. Eric sat stiffly across from him. I'm still wearing the same tired uniform. Confusion etched into his brow. "So, you're not Rick?" "No." David said gently, "I'm David Larson. I started this place 15 years ago, and I've spent the last week watching what it's become." Eric crossed his arms. His expression hardened. "Why now?" David inhaled. "Because I forgot who I was, and I forgot what this place was meant to be." He leaned forward. "You were right to help that family. You were right to push back. I'm not here to defend what happened. I'm here to own it. I let this place become something I don't even recognize. You tried to hold on to the mission when I lost it." Eric looked away, jaw clenched. "I don't need a speech." David nodded. "Fair. But I do need to ask something." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. "It's an offer, not just a promotion. I want you to help me rebuild this place. Reshape how we treat people. Staff, customers, everyone. I want to create something that matters again. And I want you leading that with me." Eric didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed on the table, fists tightening. "You think you can just fix it with a title?" His voice was low, but steady. "You think I want to come back into a system that crushed me, that punished me for having a heart?" David's breath caught. "I believe in this place." Eric continued. "I'm finally looking up. I gave years of my life. I watched it, in slow motion. So, no, this isn't something you fix with an apology and a clean paycheck." Silence stretched between them. David felt it in his chest like a bruise. The truth. The pain. The fallout of his own distance. "I understand," he said quietly. "I do." Eric stood, the envelope untouched on the table. "You might be trying now, but trying doesn't erase the damage. Not for me. Not for that mom. Not for all the people we let fall through the cracks. He walked away without another word. David sat alone, staring at the sealed envelope, the imprint of his offer still warm in his hand. Sometimes, the first step toward redemption is realizing you're too late. But he wasn't going to stop there. If you've ever been told your kindness doesn't belong, this story is for you. Don't miss what happens next. David didn't go back to the corporate office that week. He went to work. The next morning, before dawn, he stood at the front doors of the flagship Hearth and Oak. This time, not as a CEO, not as Rick, but as a man ready to reclaim what he let slip away. By noon, every employee at the location was gathered in the dining area line, cooks in aprons, servers still holding notepads, dishwashers with damp sleeves. The tension was thick, eyes darting toward the front, where David stood beside a podium dragged in from storage. No PR team, no investors, just him. I came here undercover to find out what this place had become. He began, voice steady. What I found was hard to look at. I saw fear where there should be pride, silence where there should be laughter, and policies that suffocate the people who actually give this place its soul. He paused. Some looked away. Others leaned in. I've failed you, not by malice, but by absence. I thought I could run this company with spreadsheets and boardrooms, but the company isn't walls and logos. It's you. And I forgot that. Whispers rippled. Dana folded her arms in the back. Fácil enredable. David continued. As of today, I'm launching a full review of our policy, especially disciplinary procedures and customer care exceptions. I'm reinstating our employee humanity clause, one I wrote on a napkin 15 years ago. If it's the right thing to do it. We'll figure out the rest. Help. He turned to face the staff directly. I've already started rewriting the handbook. Compassion is not a liability. It's our foundation. Then he pulled out a framed photo. It was from the early days, Eric and 3 other employees. Arms linked, grinning in front of the original Hearth and Oak sign. This is what we lost, and I want it back. That afternoon, David posted a public video to the restaurant's social media pages. No marketing polish, no press release. Just him, sitting on a wooden bench outside the restaurant. Speaking from the heart, he spoke about the undercover experience, about the family Eric helped, about watching the mission erode in silence, about the power of a single person doing the right thing when no one's watching. And he ended with a promise. We're not going to be a company that punishes heart. We're going to be a company that amplifies it. The video went viral within hours. Comments poured in from employees across the country. Former customers. Strangers, this is the CEO we need. I quit Hearth and Oak last year because of exactly this. Maybe it's time to come back. I don't know Eric, but tell him he gave me hope today. That evening, David returned to the booth where Eric had walked away from him just days earlier. The envelope was still there, tucked beneath the salt shaker. He picked it up, but didn't open it. Not yet, because redemption isn't earned in one day. It's built brick by broken brick. If this chapter gave you chills, then the next one just might break your heart and heal it. Follow for the moment that changes everything. The sun hung low over the city, casting long golden rays across the sidewalk outside Hearth and Oak. Inside, the place felt lighter somehow. Not quieter, there was still the clang of cutlery, the scent of roasted garlic in the air, but lighter, as if something heavy had been lifted. Still, David's eyes flicked constantly toward the front door. It had been 3 days since the staff meeting, 3 days since the video went live and the flood of responses washed over them. 3 days since Eric had disappeared. No text, no calls, no word. Until now, The front door creaked open just past 3 o'clock p.m. When the lunch rush had ebbed, David looked up from his seat near the window, and there he was. Eric, same uniform, same tired face. But something had shifted. He hesitated just inside the doorway. His hands were in his jacket pockets, the head slightly lowered like a man expecting more rejection than welcome. His eyes scanned the room, landing briefly on Dana, who quickly turned away then, settling on David. Their eyes locked. David rose slowly, heartbeat thudding. Eric approached with measured steps. "Didn't think I'd come back, did you?" he said quietly. David smiled, not wide, not proud, just enough. "I hoped." Eric nodded, looking past David, scanning the dining room. "It feels different." "It is," David replied, "thanks to you." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Eric's face. "I saw the video." David waited. "You didn't make excuses. You told the truth. That matters." Eric pulled something from his jacket pocket. The envelope, still sealed. He placed it gently on the table between them. "I'm not saying yes. Not all the way. But I am saying I'll give it another shot." David's throat tightened. "That's all I can ask." Eric glanced around again at the booth. The regulars. The staff moving with a bit more ease. A few employees spotted him and nodded, even smiled. One of the younger hosts clapped him on the shoulder on their way by. "You're not the only one trying," Eric said softly. "I can see that now." David gestured to the booth where they'd spoken days ago. "Want to sit?" Eric hesitated, then sat. They didn't talk much after that. Not at first. They just sat in the quiet space of reconciliation, the kind that doesn't need fanfare. Outside, a mother passed the front window holding her child's hand. David noticed Eric watching them. "Was that the family?" Eric asked. David nodded. "They came back. Yesterday. The mom asked for you. Said you made her kids feel safe." Eric swallowed, eyes blinking a little faster. David added, "She left this." He reached into his coat pocket and handed Eric a folded crayon drawing. Two stick figures standing under a sign that read Hearth and Oak, with a bright red heart in the center. Eric stared at it for a long time. Then, quietly, he smiled. Not the tired smile, a real one. He slipped the drawing into his shirt pocket like something sacred. And just like that, the rebuilding began. Sometimes healing begins with a quiet return. They didn't call it a comeback. Noribunkating. No press releases. Just two men showing up every day to undo the damage they had. In their own ways. I'm allowed to happen. Eric returned to the floor. Not as assistant manager this time, but as something deeper. The moral compass of the place. And David, he showed up. Apron on. Sleeves rolled. No longer watching from a distance. He was in it. And shoulder to shoulder with the people who made Hearth and Oak breathe. The shifts started small. Staff meetings changed. They didn't begin with numbers, but with stories. Every week, someone was invited to share a moment, something human, something real. A regular's favorite meal, a kid's drawing, a tough night survived with a kind coworker. And then came the wall near the kitchen, where a dusty, framed mission statement used to hang. David and Eric built a new centerpiece, the humanity wall. Any one customer or staff could pin a note, a photo, a memory. Within days, it was filled. A scribbled napkin that read, "Thank you for feeding us when we had nothing." A photo of Martin, the elderly man Eric had once stood up for, smiling beside a slice of pie. A note from a cook's daughter. "My dad says this place saved him. David stood in front of that wall one evening, the dinner rush winding down, and felt something he hadn't in years. Pride. Not in profits, but in people. The cultural shift didn't go unnoticed. Regulars who had drifted away slowly returned. Staff who had been planning to leave stayed, and new hires came not just because they needed a job, but because they'd heard something was different here. That kindness wasn't punished, it was policy. Dana quietly stepped down a month later. No drama, just a quiet resignation letter and a transfer request. David didn't gloat. He simply accepted it with a firm handshake and a promise to do better going forward. One afternoon, Eric found David in the kitchen kneading bread dough, the original sourdough recipe from the very first menu. "You really remember how to do that?" Eric asked, raising an eyebrow. David grinned. "It's like muscle memory, or riding a bike. Just, Monsieur." Eric stepped beside him, grabbing a second ball of dough. "Then let's ride." They worked in silence for a while, hands dusty with flour. The room filled with warm, rising yeast and faint jazz playing on the kitchen speaker. And David realized, not for the first time, that what they were rebuilding wasn't just a company. It was trust. Between them, between leadership and staff, between a business and its soul. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And real, David now knew, was what lasts. Real change is quiet at first, but it echoes forever. Don't miss the powerful final chapter. Subscribe if this story has touched something in you. The restaurant was closing for the night. Light dimmed low. Chairs flipped on tables. David stood in the middle of the dining room, apron slung over his shoulder, watching the glow of the humanity wall catch the last golden flickers of the hanging bulbs. The soft hum of laughter echoed from the kitchen, where Eric was helping a new hire wrap silverware. In that moment, everything felt right. A quiet squeak at the front door pulled David's gaze. It was the same young mother. She stepped inside, her two children beside her. Clutching a folded piece of paper, Eric appeared from the back, drying his hands on his apron. The little girl ran straight to him and handed him the paper, another drawing. This one showed a table with people of all shapes and colors gathered around, food in front of them, hearts over their heads. Above it read, in crooked crayon letters, "Thank you for making space for us." Eric knelt, his voice soft, his eyes wet. "There's always space for you here." The mother looked at David. "I don't know what changed, but thank you. I never thought a restaurant would be the place my kids felt seen." David smiled gently, heart swelling. "I almost forgot what this table was built for." He said, "Thanks for reminding me." As they left, the little boy turned back, waving. "Bye, Mr." David raised his hand, a lump in his throat. Then, with a quiet exhale, he turned to Eric and said the words that had once lived on the back of a napkin. "Everyone deserves a seat at the table." And for the first time in a long, long time, he believed it again. Some stories end where the heart begins. If this one moved you, I follow for more stories that remind us what truly matters.